Welcome to a world where particles, vibrations, and light collide, a place where leading industry experts and healers come together to discuss controversial topics that will challenge your beliefs and expand your mind. From quantum physics to metaphysics, no topic is off limits, but this is not your typical podcast.
Always be in your integrity, and in your integrity you understand that it is what it is. Energy is until it's not, right? Energy is flowing into your body until it stops flowing because it becomes so clogged up, and then disease begins, right? So be in your integrity. When somebody's saying something that you totally disagree with, don't sit in your mind and go, what an idiot, right? Just say, wow, they're really convicted on how they feel. That's amazing. Bless them in their thoughts. Don't be judgmental in their thoughts. Bless them for having the power to feel the way they feel, even if it's different from you.
It's a show guaranteed to make you question your assumptions and push you to expand your horizons. For those who are already fascinated or passionate about the work of Patti Conklin, this show will give you an inside look into the mind of one of the industry's most renowned figures in vibrational mediation. With over 28 years of experience and a long list of big-name collaborations, Patti's insights and perspectives will inspire and challenge even the most seasoned practitioners. And if you're the skeptic who doesn't believe in vibrational mediation, this show is for you. Healers, doctors, and scientists are just a few of the professions represented by our fascinating visitors that bring their unique perspective to every episode. Join us on this journey into the world of healing within and adventure inside. Our mission is to inspire, challenge, and enlighten our audience with thought-provoking conversations and fascinating guests from a wide range of fields who can shed new light on important issues facing society today. Join us for each episode if you're ready to explore and learn about the latest developments at the intersection of cutting-edge science, spirituality, and self-improvement. Enter a world where waves, particles, and light all meet. Enter the world of healing within and adventure inside.
We love to be able to bring you educational, funny, but informative information across the board on all sorts of different topics. I want to talk about COVID today because everybody's talking about COVID. And I have my dear friend and colleague, Frenesa K Hall MD, with me today. Thank you for being a part of today's show. And we do want to let you all know that we got COVID tested before we sat down to do this interview because it's important right now. We're what, 10 months into this pandemic, 11 months. And I know people have a lot of questions. They have a lot of concerns. And it's important that we all pay attention and really talk over what is COVID and how to help yourself as we go through this time period. So, Frenesa, why don't you talk to us about COVID in terms of, from a medical standpoint, what is it?
Well, COVID is actually the name of the disease caused by the coronavirus, SARS type 2 coronavirus. It's a lot of alphabets, but COVID is the actual illness. And, there's zillions of viruses out there. And this just happens to be one that has been particularly nasty.
Yeah.
As we all know, viruses are not killed with antibiotics.
Right.
And there are very few antiviral drugs. I mean, we don't have a really good drug for the flu, for instance.
Right.
The flu's been around for forever.
Right.
So it's an illness that the hallmark is the respiratory infection, coughing, shortness of breath, in the worst stages where there's actual damage to the lungs.
Right.
That damage is mitigated by the immune response to the virus. So the virus is causing the body to have this raging inflammatory response that's damaging the lungs. Now they found that it also causes a bunch of other things,
right,
like clotting, for one. Sometimes people have had a cardiomyopathy, which you can have from other viruses.
Right.
But it's the respiratory part that is troubling because that's really what's getting people hospitalized.
Right.
And so, it's really important to not get I mean, that's really your best defense.
And yet, I mean, we go back and forth since this began, with some scientists, some doctors encouraging herd immunity. And
Yeah.
yet, by the same token, working on vaccines, and it looks like we have a vaccine
Contender.
that's coming out soon as we air this. And I'm going to sidestep COVID for a second and go, if we can create a vaccine for COVID in the space of 10 months, why have we not created a better vaccine for the flu?
Okay. The reason for that is there are many strains of flu that circulate each season.
Got it.
Okay. And the way they create the vaccine for each season is estimating, well, what is the likely strain that we need to make a vaccine for? And let's put a few of them in, and then that's the vaccine for the season. Problem is, you never know what strain hits until it hits. So sometimes the vaccine works really well, sometimes not so well. And part of that is just it's predictions.
Right.
It's not, oh, this is exactly the strain that's coming. We're going to make this vaccine and boom, that's it. It's just not that easy.
A lot of misinformation, I think, out there is that COVID-19 and flu are very similar, and yet they're really not. I mean, people were saying, more people die from the flu. Well, if you look at the stats of the entire year for the flu, COVID-19 certainly has taken many more lives in the space of 10 months than the flu.
Yeah.
So, correcting that kind of misinformation. But, another question I get is, if you get COVID and you have respiratory issues and so forth, and you survive and heal from it and so forth, or heal from the COVID, the damage that's done to your lungs during the time of the infection, is it lifelong?
Ooh,
do we know yet?
That's a very good question. And that's part of the problem when you're dealing with something that's new, that we don't have all the information because we don't have the experience. Right. If you remember back early on, they were making different recommendations. But as time has gone on, for instance, they found that different treatments are really helping people recover. Well, they didn't know that in the beginning. So, as we progress and as we have more experience, we have a better handle on all of these different details. Mm-hmm. But you don't know it until you've had enough time to have the experience. So it's challenging when it's something new.
Yeah.
And, science isn't perfect.
Right.
And science is, 50 years ago, what we thought about things is very different from what we know now, based on advances in technology and based on more experience. So this is a moving target.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as far as, it being like the flu, I don't remember any flu ever extending through the spring and the summer.
And the summer, yeah.
We have flu season. It's sort of late October, November, then it kind of goes away in March, where this has been all year.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's interesting is that they're talking about, there are some factions in medicine that say, well, the death rate really isn't going up. We've got more cases positive, but the death rate isn't going up. And maybe that's because we're treating people better. We've got more experience. Now we're using, dexamethasone, we're using some antivirals, and, we're flipping people on their stomach to help with the breathing. There's all these different maneuvers. We got them on blood thinners. And so we've got these new things that we're doing, and that can be impacting the death rate. The other thing that I think gets missed in that conversation is the fact that the hospitalization rate is skyrocketing.
Yeah.
So granted, it's great that people aren't dying, but people are still getting very ill,
True.
and they are overwhelming the hospitals. Doctors and nurses are exhausted.
Exhausted. Yeah.
Okay. And so, just focusing on the death rate doesn't make sense, because it's like, thank God the death rate isn't as high. But we still have just so many people in the hospital, very, very ill, very intensive care, and overwhelming our hospitals.
I know that when in the early stages of this, a lot of doctors and scientists were talking about the fact that, going through the 2 weeks, you should pretty much be over it. And yet we're having people that are going months and months,
Yes.
may not be shedding the disease, in terms of showing the disease, but are continuing having severe symptoms and having a challenging time getting back on their feet and so forth.
Yeah.
Um,
That goes along with the fact that we don't know everything about the virus.
Yeah.
We just don't. And there are some people who are having, weeks and weeks of not feeling well.
yeah.
I mean, think about mono.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I haven't thought about mono since I was in high school.
I know. But if you
The
think
kissing
about
disease,
it, exactly.
cooties, yeah.
But people get mono and they can be fatigued for months.
True.
When I had mono in college, I got back to school. I missed a month of school. And I was in good shape playing basketball on the basketball team, the whole 9 yards. I was so weak when I got back to school that I lived on the 4th floor. And I would walk up one flight of steps and sit and rest.
Wow.
And then I'd walk up another flight of steps and sit and rest. And that was 2 months. That was 2 months after I got it.
Wow.
And I was, 18 years old, in great shape? So viruses can do this type of thing.
Right.
I know of a NFL football player who had what's called a myocarditis.
Uh-huh.
It's where the heart muscle just weakens and is inflamed. And this is a person that was in peak shape. So we don't know the full extent and range of consequences of COVID. And, there's lots of variables and, we don't know all the details. And so this is the kind of thing that time is going to tell us. And I know it's frustrating for people to, hear one thing and then 3 months later it changes, but that's because we're on a steep learning curve.
Right.
And we have to adjust as we learn.
Yeah.
We just don't have, my magic 8 ball's broken.
Dropped it down those stairs when you were in college.
Right.
There are things that we can be doing, certainly, as a society and so forth. Let's not even go into masks yet. But vitamin C, zinc, those are good things to
vitamin
take.
D.
And vitamin D, that's right. To take those supplements and get your body so that it's in peak shape and peak health.
Yeah.
So that if you do contract the virus, that your body has a little bit of a heads up and a little bit of an amped up immune system, because it's really what it comes down to, right?
Yeah. Well, let me speak to that a little more, because there's, we always get back to personal responsibility,
yes,
no matter what.
Doesn't matter.
Our bodies were designed to heal themselves.
Yes.
Okay. The problem is that we get in the way. We eat poorly, sugar, we smoke, we eat non-nutritious food, we don't get enough sleep. How many times have people said, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead? Well, if you don't sleep, you're going to be dead sooner. All of these things impact your immune system and your overall health and wellness. And so during this time, this is when we really need to embrace our control, our personal responsibility,
right,
and do the things we know. They're basic. They're not any different from any other time. These are the things we should do. Okay, so we
All the
should get
time.
plenty of
Right.
sleep. It's restorative. It helps your body goes around and patches all the little leaks and tries to shore things up. You need sleep every night, 7 hours or more. Clean water. We need fruits and vegetables in a variety of colors. They have all the nutrients. We need to exercise. We need to work on our stress management. Stress impairs your immune system. Well known.
So you mentioned these things.
Mhm.
They're all good. I get exhausted just hearing you say all the things I should be doing. How am I supposed to work and do all of those things? I mean,
See,
you just set me a 7-hour schedule.
Okay. Work-life balance. We talked about that. Well, we'll come back to that in another segment. But work-life balance. But here are some easy things you can do. You can take vitamin D and get your vitamin D level to 50. Studies have shown that if your level is 25 or less, you are more susceptible to COVID, more susceptible to having a serious infection.
Mhm.
Vitamin D levels above 50 are best. And I've recommended that for years just
Yes,
anyway.
you have.
But it's just more important. It's a simple test, blood test. It's covered by insurance. So do it. I did see a video recently from the vitamin D guru. I can't remember the doctor's name. He's a BU. And he said 5,000 IUs a day was perfectly safe for an adult. And that'll just make sure that you get your level up.
Yeah.
You mentioned vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams at least a day. A lot of us are low in vitamin C anyway, and it's not something that stores in your body. So you can take 1,000 milligrams a couple of times a day, 3 times a day even. If you take too much, you'll have loose bowels, and you'll know when you back off the dose. Zinc, as you mentioned, zinc acetate, 30 milligrams. Vitamin A, 25,000 IUs 3 times a week. These are
You're making me
recommendations.
tired again.
I know, but these are recommendations from our good friend who has passed recently, unfortunately,
Yep.
who was an integrative nutritionist. And these were the recommendations that she gave me because I was like, okay, what do we need to do?
Right.
So those are simple and cheap. I mean, vitamin A, D, C, cheap.
Yeah.
Zinc, cheap.
Cheap. Yeah.
It's low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Now, we need to change our habits anyway, right?
I agree. Yeah.
So we need to get sleep at night. We need to eat a cleaner, healthier diet. Those are foundational. The supplements are just on top to try to bolster against this infection.
Right.
Our bodies are designed to fight off infections and heal itself. We have to get out of the way and stop throwing in roadblocks.
Right. And, I'll go back to the piece of, every one of us are different. And we digestively are different. I work better with liquids versus pills. My body will take in liquid and absorb it better if I can find the supplement in a liquid form versus a supplement. But I think it also goes back to your take of we need some good food.
Right.
We need to eat better and be able to get a lot of our nutritional needs through food.
Right.
And not as much. I mean, supplements are fine, but
supplements are supplemental to proper diet.
To proper diet. To proper diet.
Yeah, we'll cover that in another section as well. But yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The foundation is the sleep, the exercise, the proper nutrition.
Yeah.
The on top is the supplements we've discussed.
Right. Right.
Supplements aren't the answer. If you're smoking, you need to quit smoking.
Right.
Supplements aren't going to fix that.
Right. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. But okay, so let's say that you had an exposure of COVID-19 from someone else. What are the steps that somebody should start right away in that exposure? I mean, it's not, for me, it's don't just sit back and wait and see if you develop symptoms. It's what can you do if you haven't been doing anything, then what can you do as soon as you're exposed and you've been made aware of that exposure? What are some of the steps that people can take immediately? I mean, is it getting into the supplements?
Well,
Is it getting exercise? Is it, doing some breathing exercises to strengthen the lungs right away?
I think the number one thing is to not stress over it. Stress
Lowers the immune system. Yeah.
And that's hard to do, but I think that's key.
Yeah.
And I think that if you have habits that need to improve, now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
And then those supplements we talked about, I think, are very valuable, and getting them on board to help your immune system. I would probably recommend some quercetin. It's been shown to have antiviral activity. It's a supplement. I've read a couple of articles. I understand that there are some studies in China looking at it.
Yeah.
But just in general, quercetin has been known for a while to have some antiviral properties. So I would probably add that. I'd probably add some, for me, I take a colostrum lactoferrin product that also helps your immune system work.
You're talking medical talk now.
Well, it's just, I know. But these are things that are readily available.
Right.
They are very safe. They've been around for a long time. And so those are the types of things you can do naturally that aren't going to give you toxicity.
Right.
I could not recommend a medication.
Right. I mean, I know that for clients that I see that are going through a viral, I have always recommended L-lysine because I have found that's been a good antiviral medication. But one of the things I want to go to in this, and not out of fear mode, folks, because we really want to encourage you to stay out of fear. But what I've noticed with viruses, and I think it's true, from my point of view, is viruses never leave the body. They become dormant, and they could be lifetime of dormant. But let's look at chicken pox and shingles, right? Yeah. I mean, it's a virus you get as a child and can reoccur as an adult. So are you ever really able to knock a virus out, or does it become dormant?
Okay, well, my understanding is that it's those herpes viruses, shingles and such, that can do that. I am not aware of flu, for instance, or COVID being dormant in the body. Now, can anyone say 100% that the virus isn't dormant in the body and reactivated somehow? These other viruses, I think with most viruses that we've had long-term experience with,
right,
then we probably can feel safe that doesn't happen.
Right.
Obviously, chickenpox, shingles, absolutely. Fever blisters, herpes, one of the other herpes viruses, HSV1 and 2. Yes. But, in general, probably not. Probably not. Now, energetically, that's a different animal.
Yeah.
Because, we have the actual physical virus doing things in the body.
Right.
And then we have energetic imprints of things. And so you're looking at things from a little different camera angle.
my energetic process versus the medical model.
Exactly. So
yeah,
that's a different animal.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that we are not, just a leaf in the wind being blown around. We can be more active in our health and wellness. And certainly during a pandemic, particularly something this potentially deadly, this is a good time to make that commitment. Plus, let's face it, we're not going anywhere doing anything else. So maybe it sounds like a 7-hour process, but what else do you have to do?
That's a good point. But so let's switch a minute and talk about mask versus non-mask.
Okay.
I mean, and we're not going political, gang. We're not going to be hitting that aspect of the political side of masks and non-masks. But I think as with anything, we are learning as we go along. And so, maybe in the beginning it was don't worry about masks, then it was worry about masks, don't worry about masks, we're back to worrying about masks. Where do you stand on it? What's your thought about it?
So if we just step back, take the 10,000-foot look at this. We have a virus that has a mortality associated with it. Mm-hmm. We don't know everything we would like to know about it and how it works.
Right.
And I look at the inconvenience of wearing a mask versus the risk of getting it, which is not as high a risk for me. But my worry is giving it to my 96-year-old mother-in-law.
Right.
Okay,
right.
Who, with all of her medical issues, probably wouldn't survive.
Right.
Okay. And so when I look at that risk versus the inconvenience, to me, it's sort of like, okay, I'll just wear the mask.
Right.
So forget medical, forget political. People have said, oh, it's a hoax. It's a hoax. Well, would you bet your child's life on it being a hoax?
Right.
And
or your parents' child.
Right.
Yeah. Or your parents.
Or all of your wealth.
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then wear the mask.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, the risk, if it is real, the risk can be devastating. Mm-hmm. So to me, why take the risk?
Right.
I mean, that's really it. Why take the risk?
Right.
Because I don't know, am I 100% sure that they know everything and this is really the way it is 100%? Well, no, they don't either.
Right.
Right. But it's an educated guess, and the consequences can be devastating versus the inconvenience and aggravation of wearing a mask.
Right.
So I'd say wear the mask, just be prudent and recognize that, you don't want to be the one responsible for someone dying or winding up in the hospital really ill.
Right. Right.
So,
totally true.
We know that hand washing is effective.
Right.
That's just, you can't even debate it. That's why we cough into our elbows now.
Right. So
that we don't infect our hands and touch the doorknob that someone comes behind.
Which is what we should have done.
Right.
For centuries. Yeah.
Right. But, that's with any virus, So some of this is just practical.
Yeah.
Common sense.
Right.
So, I just think that we just need to take the 10,000-foot look and go, risk, inconvenience. Right. Inconvenience, I'll wear the mask.
Right. Right.
It's just not that hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that when we first had the pandemic coming to the United States, there was so much fear, and there still is so much fear surrounding the pandemic. And I know that I have had another house not too far away from here, and I offered it to our local hospital for ICU nurses and doctors that were treating the COVID-19 patients that, they didn't want to go home to their families and take the risk of taking it to their families. And so it was great. They were able to use the house, and what I appreciated was that even as they were working every day at the hospital experiencing this, in the common areas of the home, they wore their masks, and they took their masks off when they got to their individual bedrooms. And so, taking that time. So, we're going to continue this in another segment in part 2. And stay with us, because we really want to talk about where do we go from here? How do we go from here? And some of the things that you can be doing to have a stress-free, as much as you can, but a stress-free life that is embracing and no longer isolatory during this time period. So, Frenesa, thank you so much for being a part of the Healing Within and Adventure Inside. And we'll see you soon, folks. Thanks for tuning in.